So good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today for our State of the Wine Industry with Rob McMillan of Silicon Valley Bank. We really appreciate you being here, Rob, and doing this for us. I think this is the fourth time that we've had you come and present to the Yountville Chamber. So we really appreciate it. Rob's going to go ahead and do his presentation, and at the end we'll have time for questions. You can feel free to post them into the chat or at the end raise your hand and we will call on you. So we'll have plenty of time for questions. I know that there's going to be a lot of them. So Rob, I will let you take it away.
Thanks a lot. I'm glad to be here wherever you are. I'm there. We've been through quite a bit in the last 18 months or so. I was actually in Singapore in the middle of February and trying to make my way back. And there was this weird virus thing that was going around. And every time I was on a cruise, and every time I left port, we would have somebody else say, "Oh, well, this place had, some outbreak." And it was starting to get kind of nerve-wracking. By the time we got back, we had already started to shut down travel to some of the airports, and it was unnerving. And this whole thing has been unnerving to us. I was reflecting yesterday on things we've learned. I didn't know how to put a face mask on. I mean, with the behind the ears and the little thing on the nose, I didn't know which side was out, which side was in. I mean, all these skills that you have to pick up, and obviously it's far beyond that. Just ways of living, and that's had both good and bad impacts on us. The world's certainly changed a lot, and as I tell everybody, if you're waiting around for the world to return to what it was, then you're probably kidding yourself, because it's not going to return to what it was. It'll be something different. And so the secret to success is probably management more than anything else right now. It's adaptation, change. We've all had to change, and there's more to come. So let's start right in, if I can get this to work. Let me see here. There we go. So this is kind of what I think. I'm actually a little bit positive about this year ahead. Probably the next 12 to 18 months, I'm expecting to see pretty good growth rates. And people like to use the Roaring 20s as a model. And for me personally, I prefer World War II, because during the Roaring 20s, there was no data kept on alcohol consumption. It was illegal, right? The next best thing for me is actually the end of World War II. And so in 1947, when all the troops were coming home, and it was called Operation Magic Carpet for you history buffs. Once people started hitting the shores, there was this rolling recovery that happened. And you can see this chart here. It starts in 34, which is when after Prohibition was reversed, and you can see the nice growth rate. Then we had World War II, and it dropped off. Kind of a little bit similar to some of the things we've seen around us. And then here's the impact of everybody coming home. There's this celebration that took place, and thereafter, well, what happened? Did people stop celebrating? Well, actually, no. When you go and when you look at the data from spirits, it kept going. The reason that this happened is we drank everything there was. So we celebrated until there was none left, and then went off to spirits and drank beer for a while as well. But you can see we had a very nice growth rate in there coming out. And so this is something that I do expect. We are going to have a celebratory group of people. People want to get out. People want to travel. They want to recover what they can of their lives. So I fully expect this is going to happen. We see it in all the surveys. And there's some questions that we'll get to about if that's going to happen. So let's look at some of the indicators. This is probably the most important one. What's happening with COVID. And you can see that the vaccination numbers are improving. We're up to about 46% now fully vaccinated in the US. So that's pretty good. And then new case numbers are continuing to drop. This is maybe a month dated slide now. So it's lower than that, except the 4588 is yesterday. Seated diners is another indicator of what's ahead. And I like to compare things to 2019 as much as I can, because 2020 is just a weird year to compare anything to. If you look at restaurant sales as an example, when restaurants closed, obviously sales went down through the floor. So if you looked at restaurant sales now and you said, well, where are they? You say, oh, they're wonderful, they're up. But it's not really compared to a normal year. So I'm going back to 2019 and comparing a lot to that when I do my analysis. So this is open table information. Here's what we had, in 2020. Obviously, you can see this gigantic drop that we had, as 100% decline in seated diners for a period of time. That's it was an ugly day when we got that shelter in place order. And then we have, following into that, this is current year 2021. And so it's actually, it's an extension off of the right side of this chart, if you want to think about it that way. And, what you can see, it still says we're down 23.85% to 2019. But you can see that the growth that we're having, and it continues to grow. And we'll show you some other slides. I think I have another one in here about same store sales right here, as a matter of fact. So this is a slide. We got 2019 in black, 2020 in blue, and 2021 in red. So that's what we have. If you look at the restaurants, this is what we have with same store wine sales so far. And same stores is a little bit of a misnomer, because when you look at this, you'd say, oh, we're actually a little bit ahead of 2019. And it's true, but remember, it's same store. So it's a unit economics. And we lost about 150,000 restaurants in this recession. So we're still below, but on a same store basis, again, it's as they say, it's green shoots, we're improving. Another one that shows up that I'm looking at, TSA Passenger Screenings. So here we got 2021 data. You can see that the trend line is up. Comparing that to 2020 doesn't look, it looks a lot better, obviously, but that's again an aberration. So here's the 2019 screenings, and you can see that there is a gap that is narrowing between these two. So we're making progress getting back toward 2019 anyways in terms of our travel. If you talk to people that have traveled, I haven't gotten on a plane yet, but if you talk to people that travel, they're saying that all the center seats are filled, planes are filled, and if you've tried to make a reservation, you find that prices are a lot higher than you'd think they were. If you might be surprised to see how expensive they are. For us, I think in the wine country, I think that means we'll probably see more regional and continue to see, I should say, more regional tourism. So Bay Area is going to drive a lot of our tourism. Reopening is still a little bit herky-jerky. We'll see some people from other states coming out, but it's probably going to be a slow ramp into the end of the year. The question that we run into is right now is, what about corporate travel? Corporate travel used to be a big part of everything, both the expensive New York business accounts. That's where some expensive dinners were had and wine sold. But there's a big question about how much of the corporate travel is going to come back. Silicon Valley Bank is in the process of restarting our office in Napa. I'm working there now 3 days a week, and I have my mask on, and except when I'm at my desk, we're going through our own sort of protocols. These are some of the things we're all having to deal with, no matter where we are. It's not again, going back to normal. If we're looking for that, we're looking for the wrong thing. Hotel occupancy, that's starting to stall out a little bit. Just the last couple of weeks, it started and then it stopped, and there's some reasons for that. And here's the big reason. So job openings are well outpacing job hires. So if you look at this is the blue bar is the job openings right now. Yeah, you can see that there's a lot of unfilled jobs that are out there, and here is the job hires. It's it's quite a big distance. So jobs are going unfilled right this second. This is something I picked up yesterday from the Atlanta Fed, talking about U.S. median wage, and here you can see that in this red line we had this is low skill occupation, but this is a lot of what we fight for, whether it's vineyard work, whether it is hotel, maid service, hospitality, some tasting room wages as well. Across the board, we're looking for these lower price people to come back, and pretty much across the board, we're finding that it's difficult, and wages are going up. Part of that is due to a pressure on increasing minimum wage. Part of that is due to fiscal spending. I just heard yesterday in New York, because of the additional $300 that comes on with unemployment plus the state component of that the effective average minimum wage in New York anyways is $22. And so when you're making the decision, do you want to go back to work, and you're having to think, okay, well, I still have children at home, they're not fully back in school, and I'm being offered $15. Do you want to go back for less money at the same time? So these are issues we're all having to work through right now, especially on the lower side of the payroll. Once we let go staff, they moved on. A lot of them went into construction. A lot of them left the area and went to go live with relatives, maybe even out of state. We actually had shrinkage in California, the number of people in California in this last year for the first time. I think they said ever, but certainly in our lifetimes. Just to looking at the labor headlines just from this morning. Job openings soar to the highest record as labor shortage persists. Restaurants are sucking wind, fighting back to reopen. We're very much like restaurants in the wine business. We're looking for those same staffs for competing. People reassessing work from home is a component of this now. We're seeing a lot of folks, obviously, that have moved from San Francisco. There's more office vacancies there than there's been in my memory. And people are coming to wine country to live. If you have children, especially, and the reason you lived in San Francisco is to be near work, and now you don't have to go into the office. Why do you want to live up 23rd floor with no place for your kids to run? Move to wine country. You can work from anywhere. So we're seeing that, and that's impacting home prices, which is going to impact again affordable housing, which impacts again that low scale wage. So there is going to be some baked in inflation in wage for sure. Just today, I heard, by the way, McDonald's is on the bottom, raising pay for restaurant workers by 10%. There's another headline that Amazon's hiring another 75,000 employees that's their plan this year. And that's on top of 500,000 employees that they hired, 500,000 employees they hired last year. So there's quite a demand for people. And at this point, we don't have immigration, and we don't have birth rate that's backing that kind of population growth. So somehow we're going to have to figure it out. Automation plays a role in this as well. So let's get over to wine metrics instead of economics. So quickly to recap on 2020. If you look at the left side, that's the pre-COVID period. We started off the year in acute oversupply in the wine business. And we also were actually showing negative volume growth at that point. The things that create the negative volume growth have a lot to do with the inability of our industry so far, the wine industry, to move from my generation, the boomers, to the younger cohort, millennials. They're both very large, and millennials at this point, millennial generation outstrips the boomer generation in terms of population, but they're still not quite engaging with wine, preferring spirits and beer, largely spirits. And this is where we were. But as we went through the year, we kind of crawled out of it as we had partial reopenings, especially in restaurant. We ended the year. This is on and off premise restaurants and grocery. So this is depletion data from SipSource, and we ended the year up half of 1%, at least on this data. Pantry stuffing, we had that soft reopening. That's the part that I was just talking about. And then here's what we had after we had the COVID. We kind of leveled off and came back down. So that's just a reflection on where we had. By the way, November, December last year were not great months. People that are in hospitality, I'm sure, would say the same thing. We were kind of back to sheltering in place. Just to look at the changes that we've had in this channel shift. So here's April 1st, 2020 on the left. And the big change in this actually is digital. So if you look, here's the percentage on April 1st, 2020 of sales for an average winery that were online. And by the time you get to November 1st, that changed to 10%. Now, did we become great marketers overnight, great e-marketers, if you will, overnight? The answer is no. It was more passive than active. We weren't out there, hitting the internet pavement, as it were. It was actually consumers who weren't satisfied with the selections that they might get at grocery, and then going online and finding the wine. So there's a lot of work that has to be done in order to capture this growth that has happened. We want to make these patterns permanent, but that's going to take effort on our side to make that happen. Direct to consumer sales. So this is a chart just got put together yesterday, and just a really interesting year-over-year view from the Silicon Valley Bank surveys that we do. And so you can see here, this is what's happened with wine clubs. So it's had some, pretty consistent growth in terms of the percent of revenue for each winery, for an individual winery. And at the same time, this is tasting room. So you're seeing tasting room becoming actually less important as a source of revenue, which is kind of a positive thing in my mind. Obviously, there's a forecast on this, but the line in the middle is the current year, and you can see the tasting room revenue dropping from 41 to 28. That's the impact of COVID. But it's probably not such a bad thing that we're moving away from this. Something I've been talking about for quite some time is we really just don't want to have all of our revenue tied up in this tasting room model. And remember too that you also have to get your club members through the tasting room historically. But when you do this, there are risks, and the way I talk about it is, think about getting a car. If you were getting a car, would you go to Detroit to pick that up? And obviously the answer is no, because the car comes to you. And even today, some of the cars actually get delivered to your front door when you pick them up. And so, we have to work through some of that. We're expecting the customer to come to our checkout stand, if you will, at the winery. And what we showed in this last year is that we could move into Zoom tastings, digital tastings, so we could engage the customer where they are. And that's a positive thing in my view. That is a way. It's not necessarily taking away from tourism, as far as revenue goes. It's actually extending ourselves to that customer where they are, and hopefully extending the lifetime value of a club member. That's the real idea with that. This is what's happened with internet, and again, this is just direct to consumer sales. It's not total sales. So the number on the left, 8%, is a little bit high if you were thinking in terms of total sales, because that's much lower than that. But you can see what the indications are from the data that we have is that by 2024 we should be at 19%. And I had said last year, I think in the State of the Industry report, that I expected this to be the internet to sales to represent something between 20 and 25%. Bain in their luxury survey said the same thing, that they thought luxury sales should be about 25% by 2025. I think right now there's something like 18. Let's see here. So these are 12-month rolling changes. So you have to, if you have a really bad period, you have to keep going through other months of higher to move anything one way or the other, but it's each of these dots are 12 months. So here you can see what total wine down about 0.1%. Again, this is depletion data. So it's on-premise and off-premise. So here is wine off-premise, and you can see that we've moved down slightly since December. It's not too big of a deal. And then the nice thing is that at the bottom it looks horrible, but remember, we're carrying that prior period into this data, and so we're finally flattening, anyways, on the on-premise in the restaurants. Starting to hopefully, well, we will move up on restaurant size, and the indications I have, very recently are that there is a pretty good buying pattern by restaurants as they restock. The indications are also that they're not going to have really big wine lists, not like before. The wine lists are going to shrink, and it's probably rational from the standpoint that most consumers now drink across categories. Whether, if you drink wine, you might drink beer as well. You might drink spirits, cocktails, and you probably have a preference, but they drink across categories. So what we're seeing with wine lists everywhere is those shrinking, and beer and cocktail part of it, the menu's growing. Comparing spirits to wine, spirits, quite frankly, are kicking our ass. This is their growth rate over this last year, and you can see ours is a 1/10 down, while theirs is at 5.8% growth. So they're actually taking away share from us, and that gets back to some of those early discussions that I had about why did we start last year off 2020 with negative growth. And that gets back to this question about how do we engage the young consumer? How do we pull them in? They're frugal. They will spend, but you have to give them value. And then there's a lot of other things that play into it, the things that are important to them about social, governance, sustainability, transparency. There's all sorts of things that you have to think through to really attract this new consumer. And at least as a wine industry, we're not doing that. And if you look at what the spirits industry is doing, they are, which is producing this gap. And hopefully we can pull some over. But that's the next thing we have to deal with in our industry. What is moving right now are ready to drink. So you can see in the middle bottom group there, White Claw and Truly. The growth in spiked seltzer has just been astronomical. But on top of that, there is a huge amount of other cocktails, and these cocktails and beverages, and these things all fit with a quick moving lifestyle. It fits occasions better. You can bring some of this stuff, to picnics or whatever you want outdoor. It saves you the problem if you want to come home and have a cocktail. You don't have to make it. And this is one place where the wine industry really isn't doing much to participate. You look at the bottom, or the left side. Let's say the left side is the way we've measured things in the past. We've measured share between spirits, beer, and wine. And if you look at beer, for instance, beer is the blue one. I'm pointing at my thing as if you could see me pointing. Sorry. But if you look at the this left one here, 47% for beer and 45. Beer's never recovered since the 70s. They continue to go like this. The only thing that's holding them up is the spiked seltzers that fall into the beer category. Pulling those out, you got if you get 5% that's composed of mostly from beer, partly from liquor, and just a teeny bit from wine. And this is another thing that as a wine industry we've got to get better at. It's figuring out how to get in that ready to drink segment. Couple more economic indicators as we're getting toward the end here. So employment did show a V-shaped, and some people call it K-shaped because the folks that could afford it least were the ones that got let go, as everybody is aware. So it's hospitality, restaurant, tourism, where you actually had to be in proximity with somebody, massage places, like that. That's where, for that matter, churches. Those are the ones that got left out in this, and so we're making a comeback, and the job of the Fed in their mind right now is to try to keep rates low and push bottom wages up, and we're starting to see that happen. That'll show up in inflation to some extent. Inflation is hard to reverse, so it's probably you hear the term transitory a lot in Fed speak, but some of this is going to be permanent, and that impacts bottom lines for small businesses. One of the things that I believe in strongly is that if you buy anything, you need to have both the willingness and the capacity, right? So if you want to buy a nice $300 pair of shoes, let's say, first of all, you have to be attracted to that, but that doesn't mean you can buy them. You got to have that $300 in your budget. And so one of the things that's happened here in this last year, with especially the an upper class, is that they didn't have a place to spend their money. So they didn't travel, they didn't go to restaurants, and so it really kind of sat in checking accounts and was used to pay down debt, especially revolving charges. That's what you saw declining in this last 12 months. And then on top of that, it went into savings. So right now you got money that's burning holes in people's pocket. And this is probably positive for the wine industry because, as I think people are aware, wine consumption skews toward college educated, higher income. And it's those higher income folks that had this a happier day experience. Going back to that first chart about World War II. See, I'm getting an internet connection. It's unstable. I hope you guys all hear me still. So let's go on to the fiscal stimulus. So there's another component of that we have to remember, is that the fiscal, we're putting in trillions now. We used to say that million here, million there adds up to real money, and now we're up to like trillions of money, trillions of dollars that we're talking about throwing at this problem. That's additional stimulus that does influence spending and does help GDP. We're looking at GDP that could be between 6% and 9%, the highest it's been in a very, very long time. So final thoughts. We should have strong sales growth. We should. The question to me is, will we? And for us to actually have strong sales growth, we're going to have to get through this herky-jerky pattern of labor shortages, because you got to have it all work together. People got to come. You got to have staffing at the hotels, at the restaurants, at the tasting rooms. So I don't think that's going to going to go very smoothly. I expect that to be a little difficult. As an industry, I think we have to get a lot better about promoting ourselves to a younger consumer, looking at their values. We have to think about the RTD category. That's taking market share away from us. We need to copy the spirits industry a little bit in the way that they're selling and marketing, because we're still selling to the lifestyles of the rich and famous, which is, you know, and for my generation, which is kind of an anathema to that young consumer. But you know, here's one of the positive things: COVID metrics. That's the most important one. That's improving at a best case rate. Many of us, when we started the year, we were thinking it would be fall before we'd get into reopening, and now it looks like, at least in California, it's June 15th, and President Biden has got something similar in his forecast as well. So full reopening, you know, 100% indoors if you want to be, June 15th. I think there'll still be masking and some other things that we'll have to live with. It won't be the same, but we should be to full reopening, which is what that data point says. Economically, I think we got the wind at our back. So the consumer has the willingness, there's pent up demand. They got the capacity, there's savings. And here's the big thing: is we just got to invest in the change. We got to invest in, if you're in the wine industry, you got to invest in internet. You got to invest by bringing in people from the outside that know omnichannel marketing, that know how to juice up what you're doing on your online sales, how to connect with your customers that are away, how to create lateral ways for them to communicate, thinking of each channel so that, as an example, when somebody comes to your website, they recognize who you are immediately, and they suggestive sell. Hey, I saw in your wine club you bought Chardonnay last quarter. We'd like to give you suggest that this Cabernet would be good. It's things like that that have already been going on in business for a long time, but we're just we're laggards as it relates to the wine business. A lot of stuff I left out, but we can talk about any if you like. So I'll stop sharing now and open it for questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Rob. That was great and lots of information to think about. I'll go ahead and open it up. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Vice Mayor, it looks like you're maybe unmuting yourself.
I'll do it the old-fashioned way. So my quick question is, could you speak, thank you, by the way, to you, Mr. McMillan, and to the Chamber. Could you speak a little bit more about the cohort shifts that you have touched on a little bit and was on your list there?
Yeah, so I don't have the chart, but if you look at the annual State of the Industry report that I write, it's on svb.com. You will find that chart, and what it shows is the percentage of each of those cohorts that are representative of wine consumption. And still to this day, although boomers are starting to drop off, the median boomer hits full retirement age this next year. Obviously, as you age, first of all, there's death involved with that. So that slows up your drinking. But medicines and other things will slow it up as well. And I just know for myself, I can't drink like I did when I was younger. I just can't. I don't feel good. So consumption starts to drop as you age. So even if people live long and healthy lives, it's still going to drop with an older consumer. The younger Gen X in the middle, they're a smaller cohort. So they've done their share in trying to keep up consumption, but it's that younger consumer, which, by the way, that younger consumer now is 40 years old at the outside. And so that part of that will continue to grow as the other parts shrink. And that's the consumer that we've absolutely got to attract. And it just can't be gold gilded tasting rooms anymore, because it's not the way to market. It's a different world that we're marketing in, and we're behind in change.
Thank you very much. Helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? We've got plenty of time, so don't be shy. No? I think, the big thing on everyone's mind right now is definitely labor. We hear that in every single one of our conversations we have with anyone. Are there any indicators of when that might get better that you guys are seeing or anything like that? I mean, I know it's a multifaceted problem, but
Yeah.
it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, so you got to figure out why there's we're still in a recession technically, and the unemployment rate still isn't we're right around 5%. So you would think that labor would be widely available. It's not, and I think it gets back to this whole thing about uneven opening. So if you are a family at home and your children are not back in school, and you still don't have childcare options because childcare centers are still closed because of these mandates. That it all creates problem because it's not equal reopening. So you very easily can make the decision to not take a job, in a traditional two-person family with kids. You can say, well, one of us will go to work, the other one will stay home and continue to collect unemployment, especially when unemployment in some cases is higher than the jobs that are being offered. So we're gonna have to come up in our in what we're offering. We have to probably make sure that we have the benefits that are in there. The benefits are obviously, the days of being able to offer somebody $10 an hour and no benefits are long gone. So that is another component of this whole thing. Obviously, in hospitality, it's hard to have a work from home. That's not, for many people, work from home is really important now. And so being able to attract somebody into hospitality when they really don't get work from home is a little bit of a problem as well. So, obviously some things that have to be repaired. Everything should, I think, be back to normal by fall in terms of we'll leave the unemployment stimulus by fall. By fall, we'll have full reopening of schools. By June 15th in California, we'll be fully reopened. So now you have childcare open. So it should improve, but I still expect it to be herky-jerky, a little bit slow into the fall, and see higher wages as well.
Thank you. We have a question about, the 2020 vintage for Napa and how the wildfires affected that and what that shortage is going to look like and how that's going to impact the industry in a couple of years or now for white.
Well, yeah. And it is impacting for sure. I have, some of my clients that had too much wine going into this. Remember, we were in acute oversupply. It's not that big of a deal. I had one client as an example that had wine that they were going to take and declassify from their reserve to their next label down. And so they just unwound that thought. They said, no, we'll leave it here and we'll sell less of this. So they end up probably doing okay. If you were in balance, then there were some that were in balance, you may have to find some other ways to go out and make up for some of that. But I'm not hearing a lot of that. Most of the suppliers, the wineries, were probably a little oversupplied, so I think they're going to be able to get through it fine. The worst thing would have been to be short going into this season. I mean, in a strange way, what's happened is because of the fires, it's balanced the supply situation out again. So it's actually fallen in our favor in this kind of a very strange way to say that, but we're probably better off as a whole, at least from a supply standpoint, seeing that brought back down a little bit. It's not the preferred way to do it. I wouldn't recommend doing that again. But supply's in an okay spot now. It's been difficult though for the wineries. As I've said to many reporters now, it's the most difficult business conditions since Prohibition for this industry. But it's really cool to see how hard people are working and how much they're learning, how they're evolving, how they're changing, how they're adapting. And in the end, that adaptation is going to pay off big time.
Thank you. On a similar vein, the question of climate change and it getting warmer here and how that's going to affect what grape is grown in this region. Are you seeing any conversation around that?
A lot of conversation. You see more of this conversation in Europe. A lot of industry in Europe is already being regulated, and there's expectations, for instance, in the financial community about what you're going to do about climate change. So when you're approving a customer, as an example, for credit, a commercial customer, you have to have a section of your approval that deals with how they're going to accommodate that risk. We don't have that here, but obviously, the story about climate change and global warming is we're rapidly running out of naysayers. And certainly, if you live in this county, it's probably harder to find them at this point. So there are some that are trying different things, and that's my advice right now is you don't rip out everything and plant a hot weather variety. And by the way, it's very difficult to be predictive of this. So when we talk about climate change, to me, it's not that we're a degree hotter, it's that we have greater variability. We have more, in our case, more drought, and then more flood. So it's how do you get around that? And planting varietals are one way, but there's also ways to farm that we'll uncover in the next decade that will help us keep what we do. So that discussion's happening, and there are some places. I had the other day, somebody else that planted as a white variety. I can't remember, but it was in Yountville, and I had it at Brasswood. And I was surprised that it was planted in the middle of Yountville, because I expected it to be cab, and it was a white. And it was quite good. So, and that was the whole story in the back label, is that they were looking at climate change. So that's what we do right now, is we experiment in small pieces, and then we get results from that, and then we can apply those in larger pieces, but we don't just go in and rip stuff out.
Awesome. Thank you. Any last questions for Rob before we end for the day? It's hard when I can't see everyone's face. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rob. We really appreciate it. This was great. And I will be sending this out, the recording, to everyone in a little bit. And we hope to see you at our next all-member meeting, which is on May 19th. And then our next webinar is a diversity and inclusion panel discussion on May 27th. So thank you guys so much. And thank you, Rob. And we'll see everyone soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody. Take
Stay
care.
safe.
Here's a few $100,000 short of making your list. Well, I never said it was